to Moments with Marianne. I'm so excited we're going to be spending this time here today. We have an amazing show lined up. Our first guest is none other than Michelle Gable. She's a New York Times and USA Today bestseller. She's most known for her book, A Paris Apartment, and I'll See You in Paris. But we're here today to talk to her about her newly released book, The Book of Summer, where Michelle unravels the power and secrets of Cliff House. So let's welcome to the show, Michelle.
Thank you so much for having me.
What a joy it is to have you here. So your book is a hot new book for summer.
Hopefully. I think it makes a good summer read because it's, light enough that you can get through it at the beach, but there's still, heavier topics and more complicated topics than maybe a straight beach read.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I understand that you have been quite the writer since you were about 10 years old.
Yep. For my 10th birthday, my parents gave me a book called Someday You'll Write. They kind of saw something in me. I was one of those kids that was a huge reader, would go to the library, check out 10 books at a time. So they gave me this book called Someday You'll Write, and from that time on, I just wrote all the time, at night, during the day. It was kind of like my little hobby on the side.
Yeah, and then it kind of led into the career, well, kind of the career you have now, because I know that you didn't quite set out to be a writer.
No, I don't know if I didn't think of it, or I just kind of, it was so much a part of me, it didn't seem like a career option, but I did end up majoring in accounting, as most aspiring writers do. I liked numbers too, and I knew that, I needed to have a career, I needed to be able to pay rent and feed myself, that, my parents weren't going to support me once I graduated college. And so through all that time, I just kept writing on the side, and I don't know if I really thought to do anything with it until finally it was the night of my 31st birthday when I told my husband, I think I'm going to try to find an agent and get traditionally published and go this route. And it took me a couple years to find an agent, and then we had many years of her trying to shop various novels. A Paris Apartment is my first novel, but that's definitely not the first book I've ever written. And finally, my first book came out a few weeks before I turned 40. So it was 30 years in the making that I finally made this dream come true.
Well, in getting your book published, especially for the first time through a traditional publisher, I don't think most people understand that it's quite a journey, just to get there. And I was talking with a New York Times bestselling author the other day, a friend of mine, and he was telling me that, they, the second book that they had, they got turned down by like 22 other publishers. And you're like, wow,
Well, it's funny because, first of all, it's kind of funny because people, I was at a book club and somebody was saying, well, I just love debut books because, that's the book that the writer really had to get out there. That's their first book. They really needed to say something. I'm like, well, it's usually not their first book, actually. And, I went through, I don't even know, and it's funny because people say, how many times were you rejected? And I'm like, well, even an accountant or finance person, you can't keep track of that many. But I didn't keep track. I just kept writing a new book and a new book and a new book after that. And I figured if my first book came out when I was 85, then I'd be really good at that point. So I kind of just kept my head down and kept going. And we had so many close calls. We had a canceled contract. We had a failed auction. And the reason that the publishers didn't end up bidding on this book was because I was a debut author, and debut authors are too hard to sell, and they weren't willing to take the risk. So, of course, I'm thinking, oh, my gosh, well, how am I ever going to get over that? Like, I'm always going to be a debut author unless somebody publishes me. And then A Paris Apartment, literally, it was published by St. Martin's Press, and that was literally, I'd already been rejected by every single other publisher out there, and they were literally like the last ones willing to publish it. And I don't know. I just remember my agent said, you know what, I'm going to call you back in an hour. I'm sick of this. I'm sick of waiting. This is happening. And then she came back and said we had a deal. So all I can imagine is I don't know what kind of threat she made or what but it all panned out. So, I think I don't know what she did to them, but it ended up working out.
Well, obviously that's a great thing. She's got great intuition, and whatever she did to make that happen, bless her for that, because
I know.
because your first book was a New York Times bestseller. It was on the USA Today bestsellers list. People love your book, your books. They love your novels.
Yeah, it was such a surprise to me because, I'd been through so many years of, rejections, a decade almost, and it was one of those things where I was so excited that I was going to have a book come out that I was really okay with, okay, and I was realistic too. I wasn't somebody that thought, suddenly I'm going to sell a bazillion copies and be so famous. And, I did not think I just figured my friends will read it, my parents and their friends. And that's okay because you know what? No one will ever take that away from me. I will be a published author, no matter what happens. And, I knew that that my publisher, they were very much well, we don't really have a marketing plan for you. You can do whatever, you can tweet about it. I knew that they weren't putting a lot of stock in it, doing well, so it wasn't I almost didn't feel like I had expectations. And then it did so well right out of the gates. It kept getting bigger and bigger. And, I remember one time Cindy Crawford tweeted about it, and my actual first thought was, oh my gosh, Cindy Crawford knows my mom. How, I didn't know that. There could be no other possible way she would have ever heard of me or my books. And so it was so strange. It's even strange to me now. And, people will send me fan letters from Romania or Poland. And it's just so crazy to me. Or people, I'll have friends on vacation in Italy and they'll snap a picture of someone reading my book somewhere. So it's still so crazy to me.
Well, and what a great experience as an author. I think you offer a lot of inspiration and hope for maybe new authors that, writing's their first love and they're looking to get their book out there, and heck, they're going to just keep going with this. I know your first two books take place in Paris, and the Book of Summer is in Nantucket. What drew you to that area?
I've always loved the East Coast. Which is funny because I'm an West Coast girl. I grew up in San Diego. I live a few blocks from the beach, from the Pacific Ocean. But there's something about the history and the charm of the East Coast. I went to school in Virginia. I love New England. I just think it's beautiful, the architecture, the history. And when my first two books are based on real stories and real people. So is my third. I saw an article about the homes on Nantucket on the easternmost side of the island in Wisconsin that were built on the bluff, and they've been in the families for generations, and they're in danger of falling over the bluff due to erosion. And I just immediately pictured this home that's been in the family for 99 years, and a family, a woman that's willing to spend her every last dime to save this house, and then all the generations of people that have come through and lived there, or even friends that have visited. And it's just, I immediately was just drawn to the location. Of course, then I had to research it, right, and I have forced myself to go there many times.
Oh, shucks, right?
Yeah, it was very difficult for me, and but I powered through, and so it was. I had a great fun exploring that, that family and that house.
Well, and what's interesting, I think most people probably, if they're not that aware about the erosion that's taking place now, it's actually quite profound. I mean, over at where was it? It was the Nantucket Coastal Conservation Society. I mean, they've got pictures of houses that have basically carved out, and they're trying to reclaim land from the ocean, and then you've got other houses that are on cliffs, and there's just really kind of no hope for that. And
That's
so
right.
it's just a really interesting backdrop that you have for this story. And then I love how you have it coupled with really strong women who play a very significant role in the book.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, some of the pictures are amazing. I have some of them on my Pinterest board. There's a photographer that's tracking the erosion, and then you have the two sides, the people that want to save these historical homes and want to save even the tax base. The tax base of these homes keeps the town going. And then you have the others that say, well, you're not operating in a vacuum. If you do something to this one area, it's going to affect everything around it. And so then I did want to build it around these women. And the historical part of the novel, all my novels have the dual storyline of historical and contemporary. In the historical part, I love World War II fiction, but I want to look at it from a stateside perspective. Usually it takes place in Europe. And, the stateside perspective, the women left behind to keep things going. And, what must that have been like to be here? And actually having to step up and do even more while you're so concerned about your country, about your loved ones, your friends, and, the people that you know.
Well, and like you're saying, there are not many books that actually show that perspective.
Right.
Most of that happens in Europe, and it's kind of like right there. But from a woman's perspective, the women that are left behind, it's kind of like, it's such a different experience because we are so far away from Europe. It's not like they can just hop a train and they're in France,
Right.
So it really kind of drives home just what people had to go through, what women had to go through really during World War II.
Right, and you're not seeing, it feels remote for them because they're not seeing the destruction, yet they still have that fear. There was a fear that you would get, bombed and on Nantucket, that's like the easternmost side of the United States. So if you're coming from that direction, are you going to hit Nantucket first? So it's just, it's an interesting, as you said, I hadn't really seen it tackled all that often in fiction, and it was just something I wanted to look at. Because it is, it's usually a European thing, and then you think of war as a man's burden to carry, and certainly that is true, because if you're fighting, you're seeing things, that are just terrible, but there's a burden, too, for the people left behind.
Yeah. Well, and so it sounds like you're really drawn by just the strong women, and as far as the women left behind, and also how they were able to continue, and make a living and make things happen. And I think that's what a lot of readers are really gravitating to. It's a combination of things. You've got this historic house that's, kind of falling away to the ocean. You've got these very strong women characters. And so it just kind of grabs the reader and draws them in. Hopefully,
yeah, and that's the idea. And hopefully all the women in it, you have kind of three generations of women. Ruby, who's from a new bride in the late 30s, early 40s, and you have her daughter, who we meet in the present day, who's in her 60s fighting to save her home, and then that woman's daughter, who's trying to talk some sense into her mother and get her out of the house. They're all strong in different ways, so hopefully there's things to identify with all the women, or even things to disagree with, between the women. So I did want to. They all have. Some are more obviously strong and overt about it. Is Sissy, the modern day matriarch? She's a rabble rouser. She's very, outspoken, and then, her mother was a little more reserved in her strengths, and just kind of there's different ways to be strong.
Yeah. And it really is applauding women in their way of doing that. And I think a lot of people can relate to that kind of family dynamics too, especially when it comes to, having maybe an aging parent who doesn't want to leave their home, especially when it's something in a, kind of a dangerous situation like that.
Right. Yeah. And she just does not want to leave. And you can see, even though she's, borderline, nonsensical at times about wanting to stay and so hard-headed it almost is crazy, but you can completely see why she feels the way she does and why she's not willing to leave. And she thinks, hey, I'm not giving up yet. I don't give up. I do not give up. There's still other options. I can find another option. And that's her driving thing, is find another option. This is her home. There's, it's more than just a home, of course, to her. Mm-hmm. It's memories. It's her life. But, it is. And then also just the relationships between the women, Bess and Sissy, the mother and daughter, they come to certain understandings of each other. And even in the historical part, Ruby, who's the bride, the young bride, she has a really strong female friendship, and then she has her sister-in-law who she doesn't really care for. I mean, she just kind of thinks she's boring and that her brother's settled. But they come to an agreement. They don't become the best of friends, but they develop a relationship and a certain sort of trust and reliance on each other.
I have to ask you, in developing this book, did you kind of have it all mapped out and how the characters were going to be and how things would unfold, or was it something that just poured from you?
A little bit of both. I mean, I always outline my stories because it just makes it easier for me to work, and then I'm never staring at a blank page wondering where to go. For me, it combats, any sort of fear of working, I guess you could say. I think every writer could say, the hardest part is opening the file and starting, but once you start, you're fine. So for me, I need that outline. So I knew what was going to happen to Cliff House, and I could immediately picture that last scene. And but getting there, I did have an outline, but a lot changed along the way. For example, Bess, who's in her 30s, and she's the modern day the woman trying to get her mom out of this house. She has a romance her old boyfriend shows up from her teenage years, and he wasn't really going to have a big role in the book at all, but he ends up having quite a big role in the book. And, the relationship that I mentioned with the sister-in-law, with Ruby and her sister-in-law, that kind of developed over time. I hadn't really planned for that to happen. I thought, part of the reason I made Mary sort of this blah character was because I just wanted to keep her in the background and not, have to deal with her. But she kept coming forward and, wanting to say things and wanting to have her own voice. And then she even sort of tying together the past and the present is this Book of Summer, which is what my book is named after, and it's a guest book, and people have written in it over the 99 years that the house has been in existence. So, then Mary came along, and I kept trying to keep her in the background, and she wanted to write something in the guest book, so I had her write something in the guest book. So it is kind of funny how the relationships develop and deepen over time, for sure. So I do have a base outline, but it's not, but I stray quite a bit from it, especially if some character stands up and wants to make some noise, or maybe some character gets eliminated. That's certainly happened to me in the past, where I've taken out whole characters.
Well, you could see where the characters become alive, and you can see the great imagination that you have in putting all this together, because it was extremely well written. Loved the book.
You.
Absolutely loved it. And I thought it was brilliant how you used the guest book to interweave all those generations.
Yeah, and I knew immediately, as soon as I knew I was going to write about this house, I knew Central was going to be this guest book, and then that the book was going to be called The Book of Summer, and that was going to weave together the generations. And it also gave a voice to some people that weren't main characters, like Mary and Ruby's friend Hattie and some others, where you get a little bit other perspective without them being some main character where you're trying to keep track of, 20 different narratives or something. It was really fun to include that as tying everything together. This was definitely, I loved writing the characters in this book. This was definitely my easiest book to write, the one that flowed the most naturally, where the voices were the most distinct in my head, where, they felt like they were kind of writing themselves. People will ask, well, why did you have Sissy do this? Or why did, I didn't really have her do that. She just did that.
Well, and especially when, you're as creative as you are. I mean, the characters do kind of take a life of their own, and you can see them kind of interacting as the book is kind of coming to fruition. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. And they felt very alive to me. I mean, and especially with this book, it was the first time I've ever put a book down and was like, oh, like I miss those characters, well, I don't know, maybe I need to write another book with them, or I don't know, but they came very much alive to me, and they probably had the strongest personalities of any of the characters, although the Duchess of Marlborough, who is a real person in my second book, was quite the character too, so she was a ton of fun to put onto page. So yeah, it was just their relationships were fun, and I liked the setting, and that setting just allowed for, I don't know, there's something about maybe, because they're usually on vacation when they're there, so maybe it made for a little more leeway in the characters and gave them a little bit more room.
And it makes it very relatable for the reader, because a lot of people do go there for the summer. For summer vacation. So it's like, oh, I've been there. I can see the areas that you're talking about and get a feel for, for all of that. Or I'm on the coast myself reading this book.
Right. Yeah, I hope so. And when people have said, oh, I live on Nantucket, but yes, you got the battle between the two sides, right? That's a huge hit. And even for me, I always wish we had, even though I grew up by the beach, I always wish we had some family beach home that we would all go to in the summer and be there the whole summer. I always wish for that. And so I think people can even relate on that level. You can kind of escape, and this is if you never had that, then this is, Cliff House is sort of your summer home, hopefully.
Now, I am kind of switching gears a little bit here. I understand that, weren't you recently given an award?
Not that I know of.
Or recognized?
I've had a few, people, the bestseller list always feel like a huge recognition, and I've had my high school English teachers and things come to my book signings, but no specific award unless somebody's hiding something from me.
Well, maybe one's coming up. Maybe I'm writing a book myself.
Yeah, there you go.
I could have sworn I heard something. Maybe I got that. Well, maybe it's not wrong, but we'll see.
Yes.
And so I know it looks like you're writing books every 2 years. So what else is coming up? Because I'm sure you've got a little tidbit you can share with us. You probably have something in the works now.
Yeah, actually the last, Paris Apartment came out in 2014 and I'll See You in Paris was 2016 and this was 2017. So I'm actually contracted, so those were just a year apart. So I'm actually contracted to have a book out every year, so 2019. So, so I'm finishing up my book that will be out around this time next year, probably June of what year are we in? June of 2018. In publishing you're like working a year ahead, so I get confused. So that book, I'm editing it. It's done. It's just I'm cleaning it up. It's very, very long. This was my hardest book to write by far because there's a lot of real characters in it. And while I write fiction, I want it to at least be plausible. So I want the real people to, reflect their personalities, what they look like, where they were on a certain date. So if we know this person was in Boston on this date, I'm not going to put them in New York or, something like that. Or if they didn't know this person, I'm not going to put them in the room together. So that's been really difficult because it had famous people such as a JFK, Katharine Hepburn. I mean, we're talking really well-known people who are very well documented. So to get that right has just taken, I've already read over 150 books for research, thousands of articles. I've had articles translated from Italian, from German. The main character is a woman who really existed, and no one would really know her. I'd never heard of her, but she was like in the gossip pages all the time in Europe. And in the U.S. in the 50s. So she's a main character, and she was very hard to track down because she kept changing her age and her name. She's in the gossip pages, right? She's a society person. She's always changing her age constantly, lying about her age, lying about where she was from. She was from Poland, and she had survived World War II. She's Jewish and survived it, and then made her way to the U.S., but then sometimes she would say she was from Poland. Other times she would say she was from Vienna. So it was just very, very difficult. So that takes place in Cape Cod and in Hollywood and Rome. And that will be out next year. And it's very the challenge I'm having now is it's the size of 2 books, so I'm trying to winnow it down to one book.
Oh my goodness, especially with that much detail and research to kind of go with it, that's going to be a challenge.
Oh, I know. I had a huge call with my editor just like earlier this week. I'm like, well, you need to help me and tell me where you think, because this could have even been longer than it was. There was so much information. It covers a pretty long, not a really long time period. It covers about 15 years or so, but a lot happening in those 15 years. So this book has been very difficult. I mean, in a good way. It's just difficult because of the sheer amount of information I'm trying to line up and put together and create into a story.
Well, I know we are going to be watching what comes off the press with your name on it, because, I mean, your books have been just enchanting reads. I mean, they really just grab the reader and bring them in, and you can't ask for anything more than that. My goodness. So
I appreciate that.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. I mean, and you'll have to let me know when you get that award, because I think
you will be the first person.
But I do recommend that everyone go out and pick up their copy of the Book of Summer. And if someone wants to join your community, where can they connect with you?
I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. My website's michellegable.com, so you can go on there. You can sign up for my newsletter. My email's on my website. So any of those places.
Yeah, and I know, I'm part of your community. I highly suggest everyone sign up for your social media, your newsletter, and also be part of your community as well, where they can learn more about the books that come out. So, Michelle, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here today.
Thank you so much. It was so fun.
We're going to pause here for a quick break. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 123 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
Ben Wexler is a gifted leadership development and strategy consultant for professionals who want to transform their organizations and careers. Through a uniquely personalized set of processes, participants discover their unique knowledge, how to leverage that knowledge and experience, and then put it all together with a global strategy. You're more valuable, your organization is more valuable, and the change is viral. Contact Ben at 630-881-1074. 630-881-1074.
This is Jennifer McGill. My highly anticipated new album, Unbreakable, is now available at jennifermcgill.com. Everything from power ballads to high-energy jam-out-in-your-car songs. I used my highest joys and deepest pains to create empowering songs of love, strength, healing, and restoration so that you can be unbreakable too. Get your copy of Unbreakable today from jennifermcgill.com. Because who doesn't want to be unbreakable?
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. I'm so excited we're spending the rest of this time together. Our next guest, Ashley Papa, is here today to talk to us about her new book, Vixen Investigations. Now, Ashley is a relationship writer, and this is her first novel, so gosh, it's so exciting to have her here with us today. Ashley writes about it all: sex, love, dating, marriage, and crimes of the heart. She has a scoop on why we do what we do when it comes to romance. So for her latest information, you can also hear Ashley's relationship reports on Fox News Radio. So let's welcome to the show, Ashley.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
What a joy it is to have you here. And, we get to celebrate your new book being released.
Yes, I'm so excited after, it was a 2-year process and now it's finally in print. So it's like, almost like a trophy.
Well, and I know you're quite just an amazing writer, and you've done lots of writings in regards to relationships and dating. Is that kind of what led you on this path to develop this book?
Yes, I've been writing about relationships for several years, and I thought that my first book was going to be a nonfiction kind of advice book, kind of compiling all my articles together. But my literary agent, who wasn't my agent at the time, said maybe you should try and write, even just a fiction short story series, just to get your feet wet with writing a longer format. So I came up with this fiction idea of Paige and this investigation firm, and my literary agent liked it so much he thought I should turn it into a novel. So then I did, and I spent 3 months turning that short story, the original short story, into a novel.
Well, we're so glad you did. It's once you pick up this book and start reading it, you won't be able to put it down. And I highly recommend it. It's a great summer read, and just a great read regardless what you're doing.
Yeah, it's definitely, and it's fast read. A lot of the people who have read it have said that they finished it in 2, 3, 4 days. So it moves quickly.
Yeah, it's got a lot of twists and turns to it, but it has a lot of your experience as well, and that kind of delves into the relationship end. And the main character, she just kind of takes it and runs with it.
Right, yeah. So I tried to make the main character, relatable, but also kind of like a hero, someone you can look up to. And like she's had her share of bad, dating stories and bad relationships, and she's been around her friends and helped her friends get through them as well, something that a lot of women do. And, she just kind of got fed up, and this former journalist was able to, to utilize her skills as a journalist and also use everything she's learned from dealing with heartbreak and helping her friends out to, turn it into this business. So she's really, all about, teaching people about, the types of relationships they deserve, and, that they don't have to put up with certain things anymore.
Well, it's kind of relatable to the work that you do today. I'm sure, your friends probably come to you kind of in the same way, asking for advice and insight because you know your stuff for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and we're going to kind of just, toggle from this topic for a moment. So, when you started out, writing and kind of researching relationships, what brought you down the path of kind of following, becoming this like relationship expert that you've become?
Well, a lot of it came from, I was, when I started writing about it, I, was in the dating scene, and I just I felt like there was a lot that I wanted to learn and a lot that I was picking up from the dating world. Like, and I wondered, like, why do guys do this, or why do guys or girls do this, or like, why do we let this happen in relationships? And I'll, come across studies or surveys, and, I'd use a lot of those questions that I have, a lot of the observations I had, through myself or friends, and like some of these studies to kind of come up with these ideas to write about. And then, a lot of my writing, or all my writing, is mainly, it's articles. So I interview therapists, doctors, just to get that real expertise, opinion and takeaway on some of these topics.
Well, and I know your articles are featured all over the place, and there are great topics such as signs that you might be dating a narcissist, or being single has some real health benefits. So, of course, I'll have to get that out, sorry. So what are some of the signs, and I kind of want to talk on this a little bit, what are some of the signs of a cheater?
So some of the signs of a cheater, and of course they don't always indicate that the other is cheating. Some of them can be like a change in their schedule, like all of a sudden they're coming home later with a very vague excuse, and that's another thing. If you question anything, because you maybe suspect, like, why aren't you coming home, at the usual time anymore, and they're just vague answers, that can be a sign it's worth doing a little bit more digging. Some other things that you might not even realize, but they can be a sign of infidelity is, if your partner is changing the type of, clothes they wear, even underwear they wear, because maybe they're trying to impress a new person, or even a change in like their perfume, something they've never worn before, and all of a sudden they're wearing something new, or, really taking an effort in their appearance and they never really used to. That can be a sign as well. And there's other signs, like if they're hiding, very secretive with their phones and their, internet accounts, and every time you walk into the room, they're hiding their phone. That can be a sign as well. So those are just some things to pay attention to. And again, they don't always indicate it, but, they usually, a good relationship is there's transparency. So if you find that there could be secrets going on, definitely question it.
Well, yeah, I agree with you. Usually there's an openness and honesty that you can feel, So if, the guy's all of a sudden hitting the gym and not coming home until late, there's probably something there to look at,
Yeah, definitely.
So, well, and, just like with the main character of your book, Page Turner, your book is exactly that. I found it to be a page turner, and it was, well, I don't know if you intended it to be that way, as far as a play on words, but I thought that was absolutely fabulous, because it really does define what the book is.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I actually never, that wasn't my main intention, but then as I, developed the character, I kind of made it that way because I always liked the name Paige, so I wanted to use it that way. And, it was just interesting how I came up with that name of all names.
Well, and I think a lot of women reading this will find it really relatable. They'll be like, well, wait a minute, I've had a boyfriend cheat on me, and that's kind of what it felt like. And, these are some of the things to look for. So it really does have some insights as well, which is kind of a surprising, surprising gift from the book.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to try and incorporate a lot of what I've written about in my articles into the book, but make it more, in a fun way. So you get some fun from reading it, and it is fiction, so I was able to be a little bit more creative. And at the same time, there's a lot of lessons in there that I've, written about throughout these years writing about relationships. Even the main theme, I've written about how why powerful men may be more inclined to cheat. So, that's what kind of the book is central about. It's, the main character is, in a big time politician. So, I incorporated that as well.
Well, and I definitely don't want to give the book away. I feel that it's something that everyone should go and pick up because it's just a fun, great read. And so I thought we would talk about some of the work that you do in regard, because I know you write so many great articles, and some of them I've just found extremely fascinating, and so I wanted to kind of touch with you a little bit on some of the topics that you write about. Like, how do you even come up with these things? Is it something that you're seeing that, maybe, people that are writing out to you and saying, hey, this is happening, or is it something that just kind of comes across your desk? How do you decide these new topics?
It's a combination of a lot of those things. Sometimes I'll even have friends be like, hey, you should write about, this, like why guys, text and text, but then they never really come to ask you out. And it's like, all right, so then I'll go and interview some guys about like, why do you do this? So that, so it comes from, ideas like that from friends. Some I just think about off the top of my head, or I get an idea even from just what's going on culturally. I like to watch a lot of investigative stories like Forensic Files and Dateline, and so, that inspired me to write a lot about, how to tell if you're dating a narcissist or how to tell if you're dating a psychopath, and even stuff on that level, so I get inspired that way. And again, just like personal experiences with stuff. And, I was lucky I was able to kind of get some free advice from these therapists and these doctors for my own benefit, but it's also for everyone else's benefit because I was able to write about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, you really have your pulse on what people want to hear, because a lot of these topics, they're, I think, really on the forefront of what people are discussing. And especially when you talk about, like, how to, sign if you're dating a narcissist or a sociopath, that really does seem to be coming up quite a bit in the news.
Right, yeah, and I follow the news. I work in news, so I am constantly following or hearing about these, stories of, missing women, and like it ends up being an ex-boyfriend who kills them, or just like bad dates gone bad, and so I try and offer some help to women in that way as well, writing about that stuff, and that's how I got, like I said, a lot of my ideas for like how to know if you're dating a psychopath. And I think that even today, like with social media, it can kind of make it easier for stalking situations, and even though that's not, it's not a fun topic to talk about, I think it's important, and it's something that, like, I feel strongly about.
Well, I'm so glad that you're shedding light on that, because I do think it's topics like that women are like, wow, you know what? Back when I was 20, if someone was talking about that, I would have been all over that like white rice,
Yeah, I know.
But no one was really discussing those things. And so it's nice to have the conversation around that now so people can at least gain an understanding and have at least some knowledge when they're going into dating situations, some red flags to look for and maybe some things to kind of avoid.
Yeah, definitely. And, I think it's just easier today to not, we base a lot off of one's social media and online profile before we even get to know them in person. So I think that's risky. But I think social media can also play to an advantage because if you can be your own private investigator, you might be able to find out some truth about maybe a new person that you're dating. It's not going to always be bad, but, it can definitely help you.
I wouldn't be surprised if you start your own group of, dating investigators, like things to look for before you go out on a date,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I want to keep all my friends and, all my niece and all her friends safe out there. So anything I can do to help.
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, and so over all of your experience, because again, I know you work in news and you're just a very dynamic woman in your own right, and then you've got this fabulous book. What are some of the top topics that you see that are kind of like your favorite ones to talk about?
I always like talking about online dating. I know it's very popular, so kind of do's and don'ts with that. I always get asked about, stuff regarding like conversations that are virtual, like through texting, and oh my God, like why isn't he texting me back right now? I don't know what to do. So stuff like that's fun to write only because I feel like people are always reading on that. I like writing a lot about, signs, like the good signs to look for in people, like to know if they're really in a relationship for the long haul. I feel like those get a lot of pickup, and writing about, your soulmate and connections that you can have and how to tell if you're really with the right person or not. So those are some of my favorite topics. And again, I do like writing about the more helpful articles that do have to do with, keeping you safe and how to avoid getting yourself into a bad situation.
I think those are all important, especially with the online dating. I know you have one article that I really enjoyed recently, which was the new rules of online dating etiquette. And so much changes so quickly with that. It's like, I think a lot of people don't even know what to expect,
Right, definitely. And whether you're just coming out of a relationship and entering into the dating scene, a lot happens now online. So, it takes some time, I think, to learn. And it's also hard to judge through online, what the other person is really feeling. So, it's kind of like, I think the best advice is you can meet online, but then try and get off as fast as you can. So start communicating the old-fashioned way as soon as possible, because I think you can get stuck on the online dating, hamster wheel and just never really get to meet these people. And, you can end up, and the other person can end up talking to several people, and, that's not fun, and it's not great to know that the person that you're dating, who maybe you stop talking to other people online, could still be talking to people online. So, I think it's best to, when you meet someone, get off of the online dating scene right away. Yeah,
and at least try to meet that person. I'm old school, so when it comes to that, I would like to meet the person in person. And if I don't know, I've had before when I was dating, I'd have a couple of guys would just all they would do is text. I'm like, really? You can't pick up the phone and call? Come on.
Right, and it's like the phone's right in their hand. Why don't they it's like faster just to talk to you. So they could be a little passive aggressive. Maybe they're still shy, but you kind of you have to break out of that eventually, or else you're never going to meet the other person and you're not going to be able to get to know them. So,
Heck,
hopefully.
We could be the ones that are looking for other people, so.
Right, exactly.
I know that you probably have some thoughts that you want to leave our listeners with in regards to not just your book, but just dating in general, too.
Yeah, so I think in general, and the main message that I try to convey in this book is that everyone is deserving of a good relationship, and I call Paige the vow enforcer because she's sick of seeing, not just her friends, but people in general being taken advantage of. And, she tries to give them the tools to be able to get out of these bad relationships. So, I think if you're in a relationship that's not making you feel good, because your partner should bring you up, not bring you down, it's best to talk about it. Communication is key. And if it's really, not for you, if it's really destroying you, then you need to get out.
Yeah, and start really having a community of girlfriends that you can talk with and communicate with, and dive into books like yours, Vixen Investigations, that will kind of put you on a new. I feel like it really brings women kind of in a place of more courage and personal development.
Yeah, and definitely it's about paying attention to yourself and what you need and what you deserve, and what's good for you and what's not good for you, and hopefully reading this book, or even just in general, if you're getting out of a bad relationship, you can work on that, work on what you really need, and that can set you up for a better relationship.
Yeah, and take you from there. Now, do you have another book in the mix coming up in the future?
Well, I have outlined a second case, a second book. So, hopefully I can get that done a lot faster than this one. But as I'm sure you know, it's a very long process. But yeah, we will see.
Well, and I know that this book has been kind of dubbed the adult Nancy Drew mystery meets Sex in the City. So if for our listeners, that just gives you a little bit of a nibble on what this book is all about.
Yeah, exactly. It's got your investigative stories, if you like, just mystery and intrigue, and it's got your, there's some humor in there, and it's, it's fun as well. So Paige is very good with her friends, so there's a friend dynamic in there as well.
Well, and we all need to have our girlfriend community, our sisterhood community there, for sure. Yes. So if our listeners want to connect with you, where can they reach you at?
So I have a website. It's just easy. It's ashleypapa.com, and from there, my email address is there. And that's probably the best way. I'm also on Instagram and Twitter, just easy names to remember, so you can follow me there, just Ashley M. Papa. And, but I think email is the best way, and that they can get right from my website.
And then if someone's looking to have you come out and speak to their organization, they can reach you at your website as well, ashleypapa.com. So, Ashley, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here today.
Well, thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
And, it was a joy having you here. I hope I didn't give up too much about the book, because I really feel it's such a great read. We want our listeners to go pick up their own copy and dive right in,
Yes, I hope so. And you take it to the beach and on your vacation, and I'm sure you'll finish it by the time you leave.
Oh, yeah, it's a great read. Well, thank you for being here with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
As we say goodbye to Ashley, I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time to tune in today. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.